So yeah, forget about that. So yeah, today's class is the first class in PHP. So we see the introduction of PHP and how the web architecture works, and I'll tell you guys the tools which we use to upload the files to the server. Okay, so that will end the class today. So there won't be any code in today's class, just theory. What is PHP, why PHP? We know HTML CSS wasn't that enough, wasn't that good enough to deploy websites and stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and see today's class. You guys with me? Are you guys with me? Okay, fantastic. So first let us see the web architecture. So what happens when you type www.google.com or www.tutoslive.com. So I'm going to tell you guys how is that working. So until now the code is in your local systems, right? Whatever my code is, that is in the local system only. Like you cannot really access that code from your systems which is in my system, right? So for instance, let me just show you guys. So what time you guys have to leave to your respective offices? So let's go to Super 10 here. So you guys cannot really access this entire code which is in my system, but you can really access the same file which is on the tutoslive.com website. You guys following me here? So the same files are there on Tutoslive website. Like let me just go here. I'll say www.tutoslive.com. So here courses Super 10 and introduction to jQuery, let's say. So here you can download the same file from here, right? But you can't really do that from here. So that means the code must be somewhere on a server where everybody can access. There should be an access to the server so that you can really navigate through it and download this file, this particular file, jQuery intro.html file, which is jQuery underscore intro, this file. Okay, so that must be on a server for you guys to access. So I'm gonna tell today how that is happening. Okay, so that's called web architecture. Like how is the architecture. Now coming to point here, this is your browser on your system. Let's say this is the browser on your system. Now you have an idea, you have a website which is in your local. So what is the next step? The next step is you take a space called hosting. I call it as server hosting, and you need to have a domain name, www.example.com. I call it as example.com. So you buy example.com, a domain, and you have to map that example.com to a server hosting where you are placing your files. You have to map it. Like whenever somebody from a browser types www.example.com, then it has to move, or it has to go to the server hosting where example.com files reside. Like in my case, it's www.tutoslive.com, and it is on hostmonster. Hostmonster is a hosting space. They have these servers. So my code resides on hostmonster.com. So whenever you type www.tutoslive.com, it looks for that particular domain name which is hosted on hostmonster, in your case your own server hosting. You understand? So now what happens? What's the next step? Whenever you type that particular domain name, okay, so the first and foremost place it looks for is the root folder. So for instance, there are two types of hosting. One is shared hosting and the other one is dedicated hosting. So what is shared hosting and dedicated hosting? Let's start with dedicated hosting. So dedicated hosting is that they give you an instance. An instance is nothing but like a computer. Okay, so they give you a particular CPU, a RAM, and a processor and a memory. It's like a computer, entire computer or a laptop, wherein you have RAM space, disk space, and you have a processor. So they give that to you, and you have to install everything like whatever you are installing your computer. They just give you Unix operating system, and you have to install Apache, MySQL, and what are the softwares you want to use for your web server. So you have to create entire environment for your files to run. So that's called dedicated hosting. So nobody else is there except you. Okay, and coming to shared hosting, shared hosting is the same as dedicated hosting, except that there will be multiple guys who will be sharing with you the dedicated hosting. Okay, so in that case the same thing happens, but somebody else, the admin people will create everything, the PHP, MySQL, Apache servers and all stuff, which I will be showing in tomorrow's class, how to run PHP code. Okay, so yeah, an admin will create everything for you guys, and he will say, hey, you want shared hosting? Okay, this is the shared hosting, he says. And other person comes and says, I also need shared hosting. Okay, I have this particular space, Sagar is also sharing with it, you can also share that space. That's what it says. Right now Tutoslive is running on a shared hosting, since we can't really afford dedicated hosting. Okay, so now fine, hosting is fine, but where should I go for? Everybody, Tutoslive has a folder, and example.com has a folder that is called root folder. So I call root directory, so it's sometimes called root directory. So root directory is the place where all the files reside. In Tutoslive.com's case, or take your own URLs. You have URLs, right? HTTP but2.tutoslive.com is such an URL. So your particular URL, even it has a root directory, and I named that root directory as but2. So whenever you type http but2.tutoslive.com, it looks for the particular hosting. The hosting in this case is hostmaster, and as soon as it reaches the hosting, it looks for the root folder. So where is the root folder of this particular domain name? So every domain name is again associated with a root directory. So this is where my files are. So all files are inside that root directory. Okay, so all files are there in that root directory. If it is an HTML file, remember HTML file can be easily understood by a browser. If it is a .html file, if it is a .html file or .css file or .js file or an image or a video, or I don't say video, maybe no, yeah, or an image, okay, a browser can readily understand these type of files. So if it is a HTML file, for instance, you want to fetch www.tutoslive.com/image/1.jpg, a browser can understand it. So hence, as soon as I hit it, if it's any of these files, okay, browser will the server will return it back. If it is a HTML file, CSS file, JS file and img file, okay, the browser can understand them, hence the server will return them directly without any processing, because a browser can readily understand these files. We don't have to, it doesn't have to interpret, the server does not take the pain of interpreting them. So as soon as I hit the server with a HTML file, requesting a HTML file, requesting a CSS file, requesting a JS file or an image, the server will just transform it to the browser, transport it to the browser, and the browser will read it and display the file. Right? So that is the files which the browser can understand. Okay, now so that's about the HTML CSS files. Now what if there is a PHP code in it? So now, since we did not talk about why do we need a PHP code, okay, we did not talk about that. But assuming that there's a PHP code inside your folder, in your root directory there is a PHP code. Now what is the matter now? So what happens is, okay, so here there will be a PHP software. Now I am requesting for a PHP file. This time what happens is, okay, let's do this thing. So there is something else here in the between, that's called the web server. So web server is again different. This is not this server. Server is different. Web server is nothing but our Apache web server. For PHP we'll be using that Apache. So this is used for routing. This web server, this particular web server is used for routing. So in our case it's Apache web server. Okay, if you want more details about Apache web server, just Google for Apache web server and you will be having tons of information about Apache web server. And for PHP we'll be using Apache web server because Apache is an open source software. So open source is nothing but free for all. Open source is free for all software. So anybody can use it, anybody can contribute to it. Okay, that's what open source, and the world is becoming more and more open source. Okay, you take any software these days, I mean they are making it open source because they want everybody's participation in it. And previously they used to sell softwares like Microsoft, how that's how they made more money by selling software, but these days they are giving it free for everybody, like it's readily available. Okay, so now this time I'm requesting, my browser is requesting a PHP file, like www.tutoslive.com/saga.php, let's say. Now since there is PHP, my web server, okay, this is the first case. If there is a web HTML or CSS file, root folder will directly return. Okay, now there is a PHP file. What it's supposed to do, it goes to the root folder, looks for the PHP file, and it gets here and gives it to the PHP software. Now this time the browser cannot understand PHP file, hence it gives to the PHP software. What PHP software does, okay, there is an engine in PHP software called Zend engine, and we'll see what Zend engine does too. This Zend engine will interpret the PHP code, convert it to HTML, give back to the web server, and the web server will give back to the browser. Okay, so now this time there's a PHP file in it. A PHP file is in the root directory. The root directory will give the PHP file to the Apache web server, and the Apache web server will give it to the PHP software, in which there's a Zend engine which converts this PHP code to HTML code so that the browser can understand and give it back to the browser, or web server to browser. Okay, so that's how you can really see a PHP file. Alright, that's how you can really see a PHP file on the browser. But you can't really see the PHP code on the browser. You can see the HTML code on the browser, but you can't really see the PHP code on the browser. Okay, so that's the PHP thing. Now sometimes PHP alone is not enough. For instance, take the Facebook. So why PHP? We did not yet talk about that, right? So I don't really know if I can. So as of now, think of PHP that it's a it's a middleware software which is used to write complex logic. Okay, so think as PHP as a language which is used to write dynamic code in it to make our files more dynamic. So we have seen JavaScript, but JavaScript is a different dynamic. It's only used to manipulate the DOM. That's it. That's all the JavaScript knows. The JavaScript knows how to manipulate a tag, how to color a tag, how to do that. Okay. So now that's a dynamic thing. Now what if for a Facebook like for a website like Facebook, for an application like Facebook, there is login and registration. Okay, so how do we control this login and registration? So we have to store a user's information somewhere to to make him log in and to make him register. We need to store that information somewhere else. So where do we store that information? So that information is stored in a database. So in our case, we use MySQL. MySQL is our database. MySQL is our database where we store the information. So a web server cannot directly talk to the database. If we want to talk to the database, we have to talk to the database via PHP only. So whenever, now coming to the logic again, whenever my browser requests for a .php extension file, it goes to the web server, pick up the .php file. If the .php file is not found, it will throw error 404 error. Okay, sometimes you see 404 error. The reason is that it's not able to find that particular file. Okay, so if the file is there, it gives you the PHP software, and in that .php file, if I have some database connections or database data retrievals, then it will go to the MySQL database, pulls in the necessary data, okay, converts it to a HTML file, gives back that to a web server, and that will be displayed on the browser. Okay, so from the browser, web server, get the PHP file, give it to the PHP software. If there is a database connection, get the data from the MySQL database, convert it to the HTML code, give back to the web server, and show it on the browser. So this is the entire process that is happening while you are accessing www.tutoslive.com website. Okay, so now I'll show you what are the dynamic parts in tutoslive.com so that you will definitely understand. So let's go here. So I'm using a framework over there, so it's called CodeIgniter. So there won't be, the concept in CodeIgniter format is that it's a routing thing. Okay, they're not files in there. So as I told you, right? So I guess you can see it now. So when I click on courses, www.tutoslive.com courses, everything right here you see, it's coming from a database. This entire thing is coming from a database. Okay, there is an underlying PHP code under it, and the PHP code is using the database connection to pull the data like the super 10 and the course description and the status, course started, and the time. I did not change it, hence it still comes as that. Okay, but what we are looking at is a HTML code. You can see it here. When I see the source, there is no PHP code. It's completely HTML. You see div, ul. Okay, and let me just come back here. You see that div and an image, a h3 tag, anchor tag, p tag. Okay, you see that? So a browser can only understand HTML, but I can't really keep on writing this. For instance, let me go inside the super 10. What if I write this as a HTML code, it will be static. It looks like static on the front side, but this piece of code is only 4 lines of code. This thing, I only write the code for this, but all is appeared. So that's the dynamic thing which I'm doing right over there. So it is possible, even this is picking up from the database, you guys won't believe it. Okay, and even this entire details are coming from a PHP code using a database. Right? So that is the beauty of PHP, and it's really fast. So the beauty of PHP is it's really fast because of the Zend engine it is using, which we'll be talking in a while. I don't think so today, but tomorrow definitely. So that is the entire thing which is happening inside when you're trying to access website. Now there are some other things like you guys receive emails every day from Tutoslive, right? Okay, that's called SMTP server, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. SMTP is used to send emails. So now in my PHP code, a web server can't really, understand the PHP file and send the code over there. So again, it's a PHP software. So in PHP file, I'm writing a code to send emails. It will interpret, okay, here Sagar wants to send an email. So why don't we use SMTP to send emails? So it contacts the SMTP server, sends the emails, sends email and come back to the PHP software with any message the SMTP server sends, and goes back to the web server and to the browser to display the entire result over there. Yes, I'm sorry. There was a lag in the connection. So yeah. So and sometimes you call APIs. You see that? I'm calling a different API to deliver the class, but it still looks like on Tutoslive itself. So I call them as they're also web servers, but I call them as APIs. Okay, application. I don't know, protocol maybe. I know that interface, but I don't know about the P. Maybe I have to check in that. So sometimes there may be some API calls wherein I have to make some API calls. So even I can make API calls using PHP. So I request the API calls. The API call will return a result, give it back to the PHP software. PHP software will convert that into HTML if possible, and then give it back to the Apache server, which will be displayed on the browser. Okay, so after all this, now you guys tell me, why do we need PHP? Looking at the image here, why do we need PHP? Plain and simple. We need PHP to make connection to the database, get the data. We need PHP to send emails. We need PHP to make API calls. Okay, so now coming to here, summarizing everything here, I call PHP is a server-side scripting language used to make database connections, okay, send emails, make API calls, and make my website or app dynamic. This is it. This is the reason we need PHP. Okay, this is the reason we need PHP. So I don't know, I'm not that good at it. I'm drawing. Okay, did database connections, API calls, and make my website or app dynamic. Okay, this is the reason I need PHP. Now let's just see about what is PHP. Like, it looks like an acronym. So acronym, PHP here. So, and this will be, trust me, this will be very interesting. From now onwards you'll be writing logic to create wonders. So PHP is really fun. I really love PHP other than, more than any other language. Even HTML does not amuse me, CSS does not amuse me, or even JavaScript does not amuse me, not even jQuery. But only one language, PHP, is fantastic. I love PHP and Ajax. Ajax is one more thing which I really love. So these two things are, which will, we can create wonders using these two, Ajax and PHP. Okay, now let's come back to PHP. So PHP, hypertext preprocessor. Okay, it's a simple hypertext preprocessor. So PHP, that's how people call. Okay, since it's a preprocessor and one P has gone forward, that's the only reason why a P is in front of H. Okay, so now coming to the point here, what is hypertext preprocessor? It's plain and simple. Like, what PHP does is it does not compile, as I told you before in scripting languages, that JavaScript. While I'm explaining about JavaScript, I told about scripting languages. So PHP is a scripting language. It's just a script language. Okay, so it does not compile anything, but it does interpret. Like something, it has a syntax. Okay, so based on the syntax, there are certain set of rules how to interpret that syntax, and that syntax will be interpreted and a result is given back. Okay, so everything PHP does, the ultimate result, everything PHP does, the ultimate result would be as a HTML code. Like, there's a result, we can embed that inside the HTML code. Like, for instance, this is my HTML code, right? Now I want to print all the names of students. How do I print? I'll call like this, and like this, right? So I can embed exactly the same, my PHP code. I'm not talking about PHP code right now, but I can make this dynamic using PHP. So I can embed the PHP code inside the HTML code so that it looks like HTML after processing it. Okay, so just give me a second. So I'm back on the break. You hear, Satyanarayana? What time you have to leave to the office? Yes, what time? No? No time? Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that you can really embed the PHP code So yeah, I can really embed the code inside it, and we'll see tomorrow how can we really embed the code. Okay, so the syntax for PHP. So I told you, right, how do we write PHP. So you can really mix PHP and HTML, right? As I said, we can embed the code, PHP code inside HTML, but there should be some differentiation between PHP and HTML, because if I write anything in a page, it will look like HTML. It doesn't look like PHP. Hence, there's a syntax to write PHP. So whatever the PHP code you want to write your PHP code here. Okay, so you can write your HTML code here, like say any tags, and you can write your any HTML code here. You can also write the PHP code like this. Okay, so all the best with the project. If you need any help out there, I can really help you out. I'm absolutely free from, I don't know, you can ping me around 2 o'clock every day on Gmail. If you have my Gmail on chat or on Skype, ping me for any questions you have. I can really help you out with your project too. Okay, but don't expect I'll do entire project, but some questions, like some typical questions you have, I can really guide you. No issues in that. I'm very good at JavaScript too. But I don't know, it's Java, right? Java or .NET? What's your project? If it were to be PHP, that would be fantastic. So this is the syntax how you write your PHP code inside. Okay, so tomorrow we see how we can really write install PHP. Okay, so tomorrow's class will be install PHP, Zend engine, and our first PHP code. Okay, so that's our tomorrow's class. So coming to the timings, if the timing is okay, 7 o'clock is the dead time, because I know it's really hard for you guys to get up so early and attend the class, but that's where I figured out the right time to learn anything. So early in the morning, if you learn something, that will stay forever in your mind. So that's the science again. And most of them here are working professionals, so I can really come at night and deliver the classes. So I've fixed this metric with me. So I won't be working at nights on Tutoslive. Everything will happen in the daytime itself. Okay, so tomorrow's class is install PHP. Okay, and Zend engine, and first program in PHP. Okay, so this is what we'll be learning, and see you at the same time tomorrow. 7 o'clock is the time. It's not 7:30. It's 7 o'clock. Okay, come at 7 o'clock. We'll leave at 8:30, and we'll be learning a lot of things. And the best part is the video will be out around 12 o'clock. So every day's class, the video will be out soon, since we have class early in the morning. Alright, so take care and leave a feedback. If you have a problem with feedback, leave a message on Facebook, okay? Because I changed the code for feedback. I don't exactly know. I did not test it because since I need a live class to test it. Okay, so let me know. Yeah, will message me in Facebook. Yeah, thanks man, take care, have a great day.